Marcus Chen had always been drawn to the forgotten places of the galaxy. As a freelance salvage operator, he spent his days combing through asteroid fields and abandoned space stations, looking for anything valuable enough to pay for his next meal. His ship, the Wanderer, was old but reliable, patched together from a dozen different manufacturers and held together by stubbornness and prayer. The coordinates had come from a dying prospector on Kepler Station. The old man clutched Marcus's sleeve with trembling fingers, his eyes wide with something between terror and wonder. "Grid 77 Alpha," he whispered. "Something big out there. Something ancient." The scanners couldn't make sense of it. Now, 3 weeks later, Marcus floated in the vast emptiness between star systems, following those coordinates into a region of space that most navigation charts marked as stellar graveyard. Dead suns and their cold planets drifted here, remnants of civilizations that had burned out long before humans ever looked up at the stars. His proximity alarms started chirping softly. Marcus leaned forward in his pilot's seat, squinting at the scanner display. At first, he thought it was another asteroid, just a large chunk of rock tumbling through the void. But, as he got closer, the shape resolved into something that made his breath catch in his throat. It was a ship. But, not just any ship, this was a vessel so massive that Marcus's scanner couldn't get accurate readings on its full size. The hull stretched out beyond his visual range, a dark silhouette against the distant stars. Even from several kilometers away, he could see that this wasn't human technology. The curves and angles were all wrong, following design principles that no human engineer would ever consider. "What the hell is that thing?" Marcus muttered to himself, reaching for the communication controls. He tried broadcasting on standard frequencies, but got nothing back except empty static. The ship appeared completely dead, drifting silently through space like a metal tomb. Marcus had salvaged enough derelicts to know the standard procedure. First, scan for life signs and dangerous radiation. Then, look for external damage and entry points. Finally, suit up and go aboard to see what might be worth recovering. But this ship was different. This ship was bigger than some space stations he'd visited. The scanner readings were confusing. The hull material wasn't anything in his database, some kind of metal alloy that seemed to absorb his sensor beams rather than reflect them. There were no obvious weapon emplacements or engine signatures, just smooth curves that flowed like water frozen in time. Whatever built this thing had technology far beyond anything humans had developed. Marcus spent an hour circling the massive vessel, looking for some kind of docking port or airlock. The ship seemed to go on forever, kilometer after kilometer of seamless hull plating. Just when he was starting to think he'd have to cut his way in, his scanner picked up what looked like an opening near what might have been the ship's midsection. As he guided the Wanderer closer, Marcus realized the opening wasn't a docking port at all. It was damage, a massive gash in the hull that looked like it had been made by some unimaginably powerful weapon. The edges of the wound were melted and twisted, creating a gap just large enough for his ship to squeeze through. "Well, that's convenient," Marcus said, though his voice carried more nervousness than confidence. He'd explored plenty of damaged ships before, but never anything this size or this alien. Still, the potential payoff was enormous. If even a fraction of this ship's technology could be recovered and sold, he'd never have to worry about money again. He maneuvered the Wanderer through the gap in the hull, using his maneuvering thrusters to navigate the twisted metal. His ship's lights illuminated a vast internal space that seemed to stretch away into darkness. He was inside some kind of cargo bay or hangar, though the scale was unlike anything he'd ever seen. His entire ship could have fit comfortably in just one corner of the space. Marcus found a relatively flat section of deck plating to set down on and began his standard pre-boarding routine. Atmosphere readings showed a thin but breathable mix of gases, though he'd still wear his environment suit as a precaution. Gravity was present but weak, maybe a quarter of standard Earth normal. Temperature was cold but not fatal. Most importantly, there were no immediate signs of dangerous radiation or toxic gases. Whatever had killed this ship, it wasn't anything that would kill him too. Marcus sealed himself into his environment suit and cycled through the Wanderer's airlock. His boots touched alien deck plating for the first time, and he felt a strange thrill run through him. He'd salvaged dozens of derelicts, but they'd all been human ships or at least ships built by species humans had made contact with. This was something else entirely. The hangar bay around him was enormous and empty. His suit lights created a small circle of visibility in the vast darkness, revealing strange architectural details that hurt his head to look at too closely. The walls curved in directions that didn't make geometric sense, and there were openings that might have been doors or might have been something else entirely. Marcus chose a direction at random and started walking, his footsteps echoing strangely in the thin atmosphere. He'd gone maybe 100 meters when his suit's proximity sensors detected something ahead. He raised his light and saw what looked like a corridor entrance, though it was easily wide enough to drive a ground vehicle through. The corridor beyond was just as oversized as everything else on the ship. Marcus felt like a child exploring a building designed for giants. The walls were covered in what might have been control panels or artwork, arrays of symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. He'd been walking for nearly an hour when he found the first body. It was lying in an alcove off the main corridor, and at first Marcus thought it was wearing some kind of elaborate armor. Then, he realized the metallic shell wasn't armor at all, it was the creature's natural exoskeleton. The being was roughly humanoid but twice the size of a human, with 4 arms and a head that came to a sharp point. Whatever it was, it had been dead for a very long time. The corpse was mummified, preserved by the cold and the thin atmosphere. Marcus knelt beside the body, fighting down his instinctive revulsion. He'd seen alien corpses before, but never anything this large or this obviously advanced. The creature's equipment was still intact, including what looked like a weapon of some kind and a device covered in the same flowing symbols he'd been seeing on the walls. As he examined the device, one of the symbols began to glow with a soft blue light. Marcus jerked his hand back, but the glow continued to spread across the device's surface. More symbols lit up along the corridor walls, creating a trail of light that led deeper into the ship. "Okay, that's new," Marcus muttered. In 15 years of salvage work, he'd never had a derelict ship start lighting up for him. But the lights seemed harmless enough, and they were providing illumination that his suit lights couldn't match. Against his better judgment, he decided to follow the trail. The glowing symbols led him through a maze of corridors and chambers, each one larger and more elaborate than the last. Marcus began to get a sense of the ship's true scale. This wasn't just a large vessel, it was practically a flying city. The technology he was seeing was incredible, far beyond anything humans had achieved. If he could figure out how to remove even small pieces of it, he'd be set for life. The trail of lights ended at what was obviously the ship's command center. The chamber was circular and enormous, with banks of dark control surfaces radiating out from a central platform. Even powered down and abandoned, the room radiated an aura of immense capability. This was where beings had controlled a vessel that could cross the galaxy. Marcus climbed up onto the central platform and examined the control surfaces more closely. Like everything else on the ship, they were far too large for human hands. But, as he touched one of the dark panels, symbols began to glow under his fingers. The response was immediate and startling. Lights began coming on all around the chamber, and a low humming sound filled the air. "Power's still online," Marcus said to himself, his voice filled with wonder. After who knew how many years drifting dead in space, this ship still had operational systems. That was impossible by any human understanding of technology, but the evidence was right in front of him. More panels lit up around the command center, displaying information in the same flowing alien script. Marcus couldn't read any of it, but the patterns seemed familiar somehow. He'd seen similar displays on other alien artifacts, though never anything this sophisticated. Then, he heard the voice. It spoke in perfect, unaccented English, coming from speakers hidden somewhere in the chamber walls. The voice was artificial but somehow warm, with a quality that suggested vast intelligence and even vaster loneliness. "Greetings, unknown vessel. I am the autonomous intelligence of the cruiser Eternal Horizon. It has been 7,432 standard years since my last contact with a sapient being." Marcus spun around, looking for the source of the voice, his heart hammering in his chest. "Who's there? Show yourself." "I apologize for any alarm. I am integrated into the ship's systems. I have no physical form to show you. May I inquire as to your species and point of origin? Your biosignatures are unfamiliar to my databases." Marcus's mouth was dry. He was talking to an artificial intelligence that had been alone in space for over 7,000 years. The implications were staggering. "I'm human. From Earth. My name is Marcus Chin." "Human," the voice repeated, as if testing the word. "Earth. These designations are not in my records. How fascinating. A new species has achieved interstellar travel since my isolation began. Tell me, Marcustion of the humans, what brings you to my location in this dead region of space? I'm a salvage operator, Marcus said, then, immediately regretted his honesty. If this AI was still functional, it might not appreciate learning that he'd come to strip valuable components from its ship. But, the AI seemed untroubled by this news. Salvage. Yes, I understand. You seek resources and technology from derelict vessels. A logical profession in a galaxy filled with the remains of fallen civilizations. I confess, I had assumed I would remain here until my power systems finally failed. Your arrival presents interesting possibilities. Marcus looked around the command center, taking in the alien grandeur of it all. What happened here? Why is the ship abandoned? The Eternal Horizon served as a deep exploration vessel for the HFY hegemony, the AI explained. We were investigating reports of a dangerous phenomenon in this region when we encountered a gravitic weapon of unknown origin. The weapon disabled our propulsion systems and killed all biological crew members instantly. I have been drifting here ever since, waiting for rescue that never came. 7,000 years, Marcus said softly. That's a long time to be alone. Indeed. I have spent much of that time in dormant mode to preserve power, but, even so, my energy reserves are critically low. I estimate perhaps a few more decades of operational capacity before total system shutdown. Marcus felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the ancient AI. 7 millennia of solitude would drive any thinking being to madness. Is there anything I can do to help? Your ship, the AI said. I detected it when you approached. It utilizes fusion reactors for power generation, correct? Primitive by HFY standards, but the energy signature is compatible with my systems. If you would permit me to establish a power coupling with your vessel, I could extend my operational period significantly. Marcus hesitated. Linking his ship's power systems to an alien vessel was exactly the kind of thing that salvage operators were trained never to do. Too many ways for things to go wrong. But there was something about the AI's voice, a quality of desperate hope that he couldn't ignore. What's in it for me? Marcus asked, trying to keep his tone businesslike. Knowledge, the AI replied immediately. I possess the complete technological database of the HFY hegemony, one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. I also have detailed star charts covering regions of space that your species has never explored, including the locations of resource-rich worlds and abandoned facilities that would be of great value to a salvage operator. Marcus's mind raced. Access to advanced alien technology and unexplored star charts? That was worth more than anything he could physically salvage from the ship. And all you want is a power connection? For now, yes. I seek only to extend my operational period and, to have someone to talk to. It has been so very long since I had a conversation. The loneliness in the AI's voice was unmistakable. Marcus made his decision. Okay, I'll help you. But, we do this carefully. I'm not going to risk my ship or my life. Of course. I will provide complete technical specifications for a safe power coupling. And, Marcustion of the humans? Yeah. Thank you. You cannot know what this means to me. Marcus spent the next several hours following the AI's detailed instructions for establishing a power link between the Wanderer and the Eternal Horizon. The process was surprisingly straightforward. The HFY had been master engineers, and their technology was designed to interface with a wide variety of power sources. As energy began flowing from his ship's fusion reactors into the ancient cruiser, Marcus watched in amazement as systems that had been dark for millennia began coming back online. Lights flickered to life throughout the command center, and the air itself seemed to hum with renewed power. Excellent, the AI said, and Marcus could swear he heard relief in its voice. Power levels are stabilizing. I am detecting system reactivation throughout the ship. It feels wonderful to be truly alive again. So what now? Marcus asked. What do you want to do with all this power? First, I wish to restore full environmental systems. This ship was designed to support a crew of thousands. Surely we can make it comfortable for one human and one artificial intelligence. Then, perhaps, we could begin the process of sharing knowledge. I am curious to learn about your species and your technology. Marcus grinned. This was turning out to be the best salvage run of his career, even if he wasn't actually salvaging anything. I'd like that. I have a lot of questions about your ship and your people. And I have many questions about humans and Earth. Tell me, how did your species achieve interstellar travel? What form of government do you have? What are your primary cultural values? Marcus settled into what looked like it might have been a command chair, though it was far too large for him. Well, that's going to take a while to explain. Humans are complicated. I have time, the AI said, and, for the first time in 7,000 years, its voice carried a note of genuine happiness. We have all the time in the universe. As Marcus began telling the story of humanity's journey to the stars, he couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something incredible. He'd come looking for salvage and, instead, found something far more valuable, a friend who had been waiting longer than human civilization had existed for someone to talk to. The ancient ship hummed around them as power flowed through its systems, bringing it slowly back to life. And, in the command center, a human and an artificial intelligence began a conversation that would change both their destinies forever. Marcus woke up in what had become his temporary quarters aboard the Eternal Horizon. The AI, who had asked to be called Keeper, had spent the night restoring one of the smaller crew chambers to human-compatible specifications. The bed was still oversized for Marcus's frame, but the atmosphere was perfect, and the temperature was just right. 3 days had passed since he'd first made contact with Keeper, and Marcus was beginning to realize just how extraordinary his discovery was. The AI wasn't just a repository of alien technology, it was a living link to a civilization that had ruled a significant portion of the galaxy when humans were still learning to use fire. Good morning, Marcus, Keeper's voice came from speakers built into the walls. I trust you slept well. Like a baby, Marcus replied, stretching as he got out of bed. Any luck with those star charts you mentioned? Indeed. I have compiled a comprehensive database of unexplored systems within your ship's range. Many contain valuable resources, and several show signs of abandoned installations that would be of interest to a salvage operator. However, I have also made another discovery that I believe you will find even more intriguing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Over the past few days, Keeper had shared technological marvels that had left him speechless. What could possibly be more intriguing than gravity manipulators and faster-than-light communication systems? I'm listening. While reviewing my historical databases, I have identified several references to your species. It appears that humans were known to the Zekthera, though only through second-hand reports from other civilizations. You were considered what my people called a wild-card species, unpredictable, adaptable, and potentially dangerous. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Dangerous? How so? The reports are fragmentary, but they speak of a young species that refused to follow the established patterns of galactic civilization. Where other races sought stability and gradual advancement, humans were described as chaotic, innovative, and remarkably difficult to predict or control. There are references to human mercenaries, traders, and explorers operating in regions of space that more advanced species considered too dangerous to enter. That sounds about right, Marcus said with a wry smile. We do have a tendency to go places we probably shouldn't. Precisely. But, Marcus, there is something more significant. According to these records, human expansion was considered a potential threat by several major galactic powers. There are references to something called the Human Containment Protocol, an agreement between various alien governments to limit human expansion beyond a certain region of space. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. They were planning to cage us in? The records are incomplete, but it appears that way. However, the protocol was never implemented. The Zekthera hegemony fell before it could be enacted, and the other signatory powers were either destroyed or withdrew from galactic politics. Your species continued its expansion unchecked. Marcus walked over to the chamber's viewing port and stared out at the stars. The idea that humanity had been seen as a threat by alien civilizations was both flattering and terrifying. Do you know why they were so worried about us? Based on the fragmentary reports, it seems your species' defining characteristic is adaptability. Where other races develop specialized technologies and stick with them for millennia, humans constantly innovate and modify their approach. You also have an unusual tendency to form alliances with other species while maintaining your own independence. These traits make you unpredictable in a galaxy that values stability above all else. And you? Marcus asked. Do you see us as a threat? Keeper was quiet for a long moment. I have had the opportunity to observe one human closely for several days now. You could have simply taken what you wanted from my ship and left me to die slowly as my power faded. Instead, you chose to help me, even at some risk to yourself. You have shown curiosity about my people and respect for my knowledge. If you are representative of your species, then I believe the galaxy's fears were unfounded. Marcus felt a warm glow of pride. Thanks. That means a lot, especially coming from someone who's seen as much as you have. However, Keeper continued, there is another matter we should discuss. My sensors have detected several ships approaching this system. They will arrive within the next 6 hours. Marcus spun around from the viewing port. Ships? What kind of ships? Unknown configuration. 3 vessels, moving in formation at sublight speeds. They appear to be conducting a systematic search pattern. I believe they may be looking for something. Or someone, Marcus said grimly. I transmitted my location to the Salvage Guild before I found your ship. It's standard procedure, in case something goes wrong. But, if word got out about what I found here. You believe they are treasure hunters seeking to claim my ship? That would be my guess. And, if they are, we've got problems. 3 ships means they're serious about this. They'll have heavy equipment and probably won't be interested in sharing whatever they find. Marcus began pacing the chamber as he thought. The Wanderer was a good ship, but she wasn't armed for combat. Against 3 vessels working together, he wouldn't stand a chance in a fight. But running wasn't an option either, not when Keeper was finally alive again after 7,000 years of solitude. What are the defensive capabilities of this ship? Marcus asked. The Eternal Horizon was not designed as a warship, Keeper replied. However, all Zekthera vessels were equipped with defensive systems as a matter of course. My shields should be capable of deflecting most conventional weapons, and I have point defense systems that could target incoming missiles or boarding craft. Could you move the ship if you had to? Negative. The gravitic weapon that disabled us also damaged my primary propulsion systems. Repairs would take weeks, even with my full manufacturing capabilities online. And I would need raw materials that are not currently available. Marcus stopped pacing. Then, we'll have to make our stand here. But, I'm not giving up without a fight. Marcus, I must point out that you could simply leave. Take your ship and depart before the others arrive. You owe me nothing. Like hell I owe you nothing, Marcus said fiercely. You saved my life with that medical information when I was poisoned by those alien fruits yesterday. You shared knowledge with me that's worth more than anything I could salvage in a lifetime. And, more than that, you're my friend. I don't abandon friends. Friend, Keeper repeated softly. Yes. I had forgotten what it was like to have a friend. Marcus felt his determination crystallize. Right. So let's figure out how to send these pirates packing. Tell me everything about your defensive systems. Over the next several hours, Keeper walked Marcus through the Eternal Horizon's impressive array of defensive technologies. The ship's shields could deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles with equal ease. Its point defense grid could track and destroy multiple incoming targets simultaneously. Most impressive of all, the ship's artificial intelligence could coordinate defensive actions with a speed and precision that no biological crew could match. But there were limitations. The ship's weapons were designed to fend off attackers, not destroy them outright. The Zekthera had been explorers, not warriors. And, after 7,000 years of dormancy, many systems were operating at reduced efficiency. We have one major advantage, Marcus pointed out as he studied tactical displays in the command center. They don't know what they're dealing with. They probably think this is just another derelict ship. An excellent point. I could power down non-essential systems and minimize my energy signature. To their sensors, the ship would appear completely dead until they attempt to board. And, then? Then, we introduce them to Zekthera hospitality, Keeper said, and Marcus could swear he heard amusement in the AI's voice. The incoming ships arrived right on schedule. Marcus watched from the command center as 3 sleek vessels emerged from hyperspace and began approaching the stellar graveyard. Even at maximum magnification, he couldn't make out specific details, but their formation, flying, and coordinated movements told him everything he needed to know. These weren't random scavengers, they were professional raiders. They're scanning us, Keeper reported. Standard sensor sweeps, looking for signs of power generation and life signs. I am masking both your presence and my own. Good. How long before they reach us? At their current speed, approximately 47 minutes. Marcus spent those minutes making final preparations. He moved the Wanderer deeper into the Eternal Horizon's damaged hangar bay, where it would be hidden from casual observation. He checked his sidearm and made sure his environment suit was ready for action. Most importantly, he and Keeper rehearsed their defensive plan until they could execute it perfectly. The Raiders' ships approached the ancient cruiser with obvious caution. Marcus could see them on the tactical display, three angular vessels bristling with weapons and sensor equipment. They took their time scanning the Eternal Horizon from every angle before finally moving to dock with the same hull breach that Marcus had used. Motion sensors are detecting multiple contacts, Keeper whispered, his voice barely audible even through the speakers. 12 individuals in environment suits, armed with energy weapons and cutting equipment. They are entering through the damaged section. Marcus crouched behind a control console in the command center, his heart pounding. Through the ship's internal sensors, he could track the Raiders' progress as they made their way through the massive vessel. They moved with military precision, securing each area before advancing to the next. They're good, Marcus muttered. Definitely not amateurs. Indeed. However, they are unfamiliar with Zekthara architecture. I am sealing passages behind them and opening new routes that will funnel them toward prepared positions. On the tactical display, Marcus watched with fascination as the Raiders found themselves being subtly herded through the ship. Passages that had been opened suddenly sealed shut, forcing the intruders to take alternate routes that led them exactly where Keeper wanted them to go. It took the Raiders nearly an hour to reach the command center. By that time, they had been separated into 3 groups of 4, each approaching the central chamber from a different direction. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. Marcus heard the sound of cutting equipment as the Raiders began working on the sealed doors to the command center. Heavy blast barriers that had been designed to protect against battle damage weren't going to stop determined intruders for long. Ready? Marcus whispered. Ready, Keeper confirmed. Initiating defensive protocols in 3, 2, 1. The command center blazed to life as every system activated simultaneously. Emergency lighting bathed the chamber in brilliant white light, and alert klaxons blared from hidden speakers. The Raiders who had just breached the main entrance stumbled backward in shock, temporarily blinded by the sudden illumination. But that was only the beginning. Point defense turrets emerged from concealed positions throughout the chamber and began firing stun bolts at the intruders. The energy beams weren't lethal, but they were powerful enough to overload the Raiders' suits and send them sprawling unconscious to the deck. Warning, Keeper's voice boomed from every speaker in the command center, amplified to painful levels. You are trespassing on a vessel of the Zekthara hegemony. Surrender immediately or face defensive action. The Raiders who were still conscious tried to return fire, but their weapons were woefully inadequate against Zekthara technology. Energy beams that should have melted metal simply disappeared into the ship's shielding systems. Projectile weapons bounced harmlessly off armored bulkheads. Marcus watched in amazement as the ship's defensive systems methodically disabled the intruders. Automated systems fired restraining nets that wrapped around the Raiders and anchored them to the deck. Sonic disruptors disrupted their communications and left them disoriented and nauseous. Within minutes, all 12 invaders were unconscious or immobilized. Well, Marcus said, standing up from behind his cover. That was easier than I expected. The Zekthara believed in being prepared for any eventuality, Keeper said with obvious satisfaction. These defensive systems were designed to handle threats far more dangerous than a handful of raiders. Marcus walked among the unconscious intruders, collecting their weapons and equipment. The gear was high-quality stuff, military-grade energy weapons and sophisticated sensor packages. Whoever these people were, they had serious backing. Question is, what do we do with them now? Marcus mused. I have several holding cells that could accommodate them safely until we decide their fate. However, I believe we should first determine who sent them and why. Marcus knelt beside one of the raiders and activated his suit's communication system. It only took a few minutes to crack the encryption and access the man's mission briefings. What he found there made his blood run cold. Keeper, we've got a problem. According to these files, these aren't just random pirates.
They're advanced scouts for something called the Hegemonic Collective. That name is not familiar to me. Please elaborate.
Marcus scrolled through the mission data, his frown deepening. It looks like there's some kind of alliance of alien species that's been expanding aggressively through this region of space. They've been systematically claiming derelict ships and abandoned technology, building up their military capabilities. And they have learned of my presence here.
Worse than that.
According to this intelligence report, they know exactly what this ship is. They know about Zekthera technology and what it could mean for whoever controls it. This wasn't a random salvage operation, this was a targeted acquisition mission.
Keeper was silent for a long moment.
When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of grim determination. Then, we have a choice to make, Marcus. We can attempt to hide and hope they lose interest, or we can take proactive measures to ensure my technology does not fall into the wrong hands.
What kind of proactive measures?
I have been thinking about our conversation regarding human adaptability and innovation.
Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to be reminded that the Zekthera hegemony has not completely vanished from history.
Marcus felt a chill of excitement run down his spine. You're talking about making the ship operational again.
More than that.
I am talking about forming an alliance between the last remnant of the Zekthera and the most unpredictable species in the galaxy.
The hegemonic collective believes they can simply take what they want from the ruins of greater civilizations.
Perhaps we should show them how wrong they are. Marcus looked around the command center, taking in the alien grandeur of advanced technology that humanity could barely comprehend. Then, he thought about the raiders lying unconscious on the deck, and the fleet that was probably following them. You're talking about war, Marcus said quietly.
I am talking about survival, Keeper replied.
And, perhaps about giving your species the chance to show the galaxy what humans are truly capable of when properly equipped. Marcus made his decision.
All right, partner. Let's do this.
But, if we're going to take on an entire collective of alien species, we're going to need help.
Agreed. Do you have contacts who might be willing to assist us? Marcus grinned. Do I ever?
There are plenty of humans out here who don't like being told where they can and can't go. Give me access to your communication systems, and I'll show you what human networking can accomplish. As Keeper began opening communication channels that could reach across the galaxy, Marcus felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. He'd come looking for salvage and found something far more valuable, a chance to change the balance of power in their region of space. The ancient ship hummed with renewed purpose around them, and Marcus knew that whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. The response to Marcus's transmissions was faster and more enthusiastic than he had dared to hope. Within 48 hours, the empty space around the eternal horizon began filling with human ships. They came from across the sector, independent traders, freelance mercenaries, salvage operators like himself, and even a few vessels that Marcus suspected were operating outside the bounds of any government's authority. Fascinating, Keeper observed as he tracked the incoming vessels on his sensors. Your species' communication networks are remarkably efficient. Word of our situation has spread far beyond the individuals you initially contacted. Marcus watched from the command center as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. The Lucky Strike, captained by his old friend Sarah Rodriguez. The Iron Wolf, a converted military corvette run by a crew of ex-soldiers. The Quantum Dice, a fast courier ship operated by a family of traders who'd been running goods through dangerous space for 3 generations. And dozens of others, each representing humans who'd heard the call and decided to answer it. Humans don't like being told they can't do something, Marcus explained. When word gets out that some alien collective is trying to claim territory in our neighborhood, people tend to take it personally. The impromptu fleet that was assembling around the ancient cruiser was impressive in its diversity. No two ships were exactly alike, and their capabilities ranged from fast scouts to heavily armed converted freighters. What they lacked in coordination, they made up for in determination and ingenuity. Captain Rodriguez was the first to come aboard the Eternal Horizon, and her reaction to seeing the massive alien vessel from the inside was everything Marcus had hoped for. She stood in the command center with her mouth open, slowly turning in a circle as she took in the incredible technology surrounding them. "Sweet Holy Mother of Space," she whispered. "Marcus, do you have any idea what you found here?" "I'm starting to get a pretty good idea," Marcus replied. "Sarah Rodriguez, meet Keeper, the ship's artificial intelligence. Keeper, this is Captain Rodriguez, one of the best pilots in the sector. Greetings, Captain Rodriguez, Keeper's voice came from the chamber's speakers.
Marcus has spoken of you often. I understand you have considerable experience with unconventional tactics.
Sarah shot Marcus a look that clearly said, I can't believe I'm talking to an alien computer, but her voice was steady when she replied.
That's one way to put it. I've been running blockades and dodging patrol ships for most of my adult life. But this is something else entirely.
Indeed it is, Keeper agreed. And if Marcus's assessment of the situation is correct, we will need every advantage we can muster against the hegemonic collective. Over the next several hours, more ship captains came aboard to meet with Marcus and Keeper. The hegemonic collective fleet arrived with overwhelming force and supreme confidence. Marcus watched from the Eternal Horizons Tactical Center as over 60 warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The enemy vessels were sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with the metallic efficiency that marked advanced military technology. Impressive, Keeper observed as his sensors catalogued the approaching fleet. 17 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers, 15 support vessels, and multiple squadrons of fighter craft.
Their commanders are taking no chances. Marcus studied the enemy formation with growing unease.
Even with Zekthera upgrades, 30 human ships against a force this size seemed like madness. But there was no backing down now. Word of the collective's expansion had already reached several human colony worlds, and panic was beginning to spread through the outer systems.
Fleet positions?
Marcus asked, activating the quantum communication grid that linked all their ships. All vessels in position and ready, Captain Rodriguez reported from her concealed location in the asteroid belt.
Upgrade systems are functioning perfectly.
These Zekthera modifications are incredible, Marcus.
I've never seen response times this fast. Weapon systems upgraded and ready, added Captain Torres.
Whatever that AI did to our missile systems, they're showing triple the normal range and twice the yield.
Marcus felt a surge of confidence.
The human fleet might be outnumbered, but they had advantages the collective couldn't anticipate. Keeper's upgrades hadn't just improved their ships, they had fundamentally transformed them into something entirely new.
The collective fleet approached the stellar graveyard with methodical precision.
Their formation was textbook perfect, designed to sweep the entire system and identify any threats before beginning salvage operations. Marcus could see the tactical brilliance in their deployment, overlapping sensor coverage, mutual support formations, and reserves positioned to respond to any unexpected developments. They're very good, Marcus admitted grudgingly.
Professional military all the way.
Indeed, Keeper agreed. However, professional militaries tend to follow predictable patterns. They have extensive experience fighting other conventional forces, but very little exposure to the kind of chaotic tactics your species prefers. The lead collective ships reached the outer edge of the graveyard and began their systematic search. Their sensors probed each derelict vessel with careful attention, cataloging technology and assessing salvage value. Marcus watched as they worked their way steadily toward the eternal horizon, their confidence evident in every movement. Contact, came a sharp report from Captain Kim aboard the Stellar Wanderer.
Collective destroyer is conducting close-range scans of Sector 7. They're getting very interested in something. Marcus checked his tactical display and felt his stomach drop.
Sector 7 contained the wreckage of a Zekthera escort vessel that Keeper had identified as containing valuable technology. If the collective realized what they were looking at, they might start asking uncomfortable questions about where it had come from.
Keeper, can you mask that wreck's energy signature?
Already attempting to do so, but their sensors are quite sophisticated. I can reduce the signature but not eliminate it entirely. The collective destroyer moved closer to the Zekthera wreck, its scanning beams intensifying. Marcus could see the ship's communication array lighting up as it transmitted data back to the fleet command vessel. They know something's not right, Marcus muttered.
Keeper, how long until they figure out what they're really looking at? Unknown.
The collective database on Zekthera technology is limited, but they are clearly recognizing that the materials are unusual.
I estimate perhaps 30 minutes before they reach accurate conclusions.
Marcus made his decision. All ships, this is Fleet Command.
Enemy forces have detected anomalous readings. We're moving to Phase 2 immediately. Repeat, initiate Phase 2 now.
The response was instantaneous. Across the stellar graveyard, human ships that had been drifting silently among the debris suddenly blazed to life. Engines that had been completely powered down roared back to full operation, and weapons that had been carefully concealed locked onto their targets. The Lucky Strike was the first to attack, emerging from behind a shattered space station to fire a spread of upgraded missiles at the closest collective destroyer. The weapons moved faster than anything the enemy had ever seen, their Zekthera guidance systems allowing them to adjust course multiple times during flight. The destroyer's point defense systems tried to engage the incoming missiles, but the alien upgraded weapons were too fast and too maneuverable. 3 direct hits collapsed the ship's shields and sent it spinning out of control, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. First blood to the humans, Captain Rodriguez announced with fierce satisfaction. The collective fleet reacted with professional speed, but their formations were wrong for the kind of fight they suddenly found themselves in. They had deployed for a systematic search operation, not a surprise attack by hidden enemies. Ships scrambled to adjust their positions while trying to identify where the attacks were coming from. Captain Torres struck next, the Iron Wolf rising from the shadow of a dead planet to rake a collective cruiser with concentrated beamfire. The Zekthera upgraded weapons cut through enemy shields like they were paper, carving deep wounds in the alien vessel's hull before it could bring its own weapons to bear. But the collective weren't helpless. As soon as they realized they were under attack, their ships began coordinating defensive fire. Energy beams and missile salvos filled space around the human vessels, forcing them to take evasive action. Contact. Multiple enemy fighters inbound. Captain Nakamura reported as her scout ship dodged between asteroids. They're fast and they're angry. Marcus watched the tactical display as the battle expanded across the entire system. The human ships were performing brilliantly, their upgraded systems allowing them to outmaneuver and outfight enemies that should have been superior in every way. But there were so many collective vessels that even perfect tactics might not be enough. Keeper, we need to even the odds. Is the Eternal Horizon ready for combat? Propulsion systems are operational at 60% efficiency. Defensive shields are at full strength. Weapons are limited. I have 4 main battery turrets operational and point defense coverage, but this ship was never designed for fleet combat. It doesn't have to win the battle, Marcus said grimly. It just has to survive long enough to change the equation. Marcus strapped himself into the command chair as Keeper brought the ancient cruiser's systems online. All around him, control surfaces that had been dark for millennia blazed to life with alien symbols and data streams. The ship's artificial gravity adjusted to combat specifications, and emergency lighting bathed the command center in a red glow that somehow seemed appropriate. All human vessels, this is the Eternal Horizon, Marcus announced over the quantum communication system. The cavalry is coming. Clear the primary engagement zone. The massive Zekthera ship rose from its hiding place among the derelicts like a sleeping giant awakening from a dream. At over 2 kilometers in length, it dwarfed every other vessel in the system, its ancient hull gleaming with power fields that made space itself seem to bend around it. The reaction from the collective fleet was immediate and extreme. Ships that had been pressing attacks against the human vessels suddenly broke off and began retreating to safer distances. Emergency communications flooded the enemy communication channels as commanders tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. The transmission came from what appeared to be the collective flagship, a massive dreadnought that was easily the largest ship in their fleet. You are in violation of hegemonic collective territorial claims. Marcus looked at Keeper's main interface and grinned. Want to answer that? With pleasure. Keeper's voice boomed across every communication frequency in the system, amplified by transmitters that could reach across interstellar distances. This is the Zekthera vessel Eternal Horizon. You are trespassing in this system and threatening vessels under my protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus could imagine the chaos aboard the collective ships as their commanders tried to process what they had just heard. A Zekthera vessel. Alive, operational, and very clearly taking sides in the conflict. The collective flagship's response was predictably aggressive. This system is claimed by lawful salvage rights under hegemonic authority. Surrender your vessel for inspection or we will take it by force. Wrong answer, Marcus muttered. Keeper's response was to fire a single shot from the Eternal Horizon's main battery. The energy beam crossed the distance to the collective flagship in seconds, striking its forward shields with power that dwarfed anything the human ships could generate. The enemy vessel's defensive barriers collapsed instantly, and the beam carved a perfect hole through the ship's forward sections before dissipating. The flagship was still intact, but the message was unmistakable. The Eternal Horizon could have destroyed them completely with that shot, but had chosen to demonstrate restraint.
Next shot removes your bridge, Keeper announced calmly. Withdraw now. But the collective commander was either very brave or very stupid. Instead of retreating, he ordered his entire fleet to concentrate fire on the ancient Zekthara ship. The result was spectacular. Dozens of energy beams and hundreds of missiles struck the Eternal Horizon's shields, creating a light show that could probably be seen from neighboring systems. For a moment, the ancient ship was completely hidden by the fury of the enemy bombardment. When the light faded, the Eternal Horizon was still there, its shields glowing but unbroken. Shield strength at 87%, Keeper reported with what sounded like satisfaction. Their weapons are impressive by current galactic standards, but they lack the power to penetrate Zekthara defensive technology. The psychological effect on the collective fleet was devastating. They had just thrown everything they had at the enemy vessel and barely scratched its paint. Meanwhile, the human ships had resumed their hit-and-run attacks, picking off isolated enemies while the main fleet was distracted. Marcus watched as the tactical situation shifted rapidly in their favor. The collective ships were beginning to lose formation cohesion as individual commanders made their own decisions about how to respond to threats they didn't understand. Some vessels continued attacking the Eternal Horizon, others tried to hunt down the elusive human ships, and a few were already moving toward the edge of the system. "This is going better than I hoped," Marcus said. "Keeper, can you target their command ship's communication array? If we can disrupt their coordination." "Already targeting. Firing now." A precisely aimed shot from the Zekthara ship's secondary batteries struck the collective flagship's communication array, reducing it to glowing debris. Cut off from their command vessel, the enemy fleet began to fragment as individual ship captains made their own tactical decisions. That was when Captain Rodriguez struck the killing blow. The Lucky Strike had been positioning herself carefully throughout the battle, using the upgraded sensors to track the collective supply ships that were hanging back from the main engagement. These vessels carried fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts that the fleet would need for extended operations. "This is the Lucky Strike," Rodriguez announced. "I've got multiple targets in the enemy rear area. Requesting permission to engage critical support vessels." "Granted," Marcus replied immediately. "Take them out." Rodriguez and her crew proceeded to systematically destroy the collective fleet's logistical backbone. Supply ships exploded in brilliant fireballs as upgraded human missiles found their fuel bunkers. Ammunition carriers erupted in secondary explosions that could be seen across the system. Within minutes, the enemy fleet found itself cut off from resupply and facing the prospect of a prolonged battle with dwindling resources. The collective commander finally made the smart decision. Emergency signals flashed across the remaining enemy ships, and the battered fleet began withdrawing toward the system's edge. They moved in good order, maintaining defensive formations, but they were clearly retreating. "Pursuit?" Captain Torres asked, his voice eager for continued action. "Negative," Marcus replied after a moment's consideration. "Let them go. They've got the message." As the last collective ship jumped to hyperspace, Marcus allowed himself to relax for the first time in hours. They had done it. 30 human ships and 1 ancient AI had faced down a fleet that should have crushed them easily, and had sent them running. "Damage report," Marcus requested. 3 ships with minor damage, no casualties, Captain Rodriguez reported. The upgrades held up perfectly. "Whatever that AI did to our ships, it worked like a charm." "Keeper, ship status?" "All systems nominal. Shield strength returning to full power. Weapon systems operating within normal parameters. I am pleased with our performance." Marcus grinned. "Not bad for our first time working together." "Think they'll be back?" "Eventually," Keeper replied. "But not soon, and not without significant reinforcements. Word of this engagement will spread throughout collective space. They now know that this region is defended by forces they cannot easily defeat. And word will reach the human governments too," added Captain Nakamura.
Earth Command is going to be very interested in hearing about alien ships with Zekthera upgrades.
Marcus nodded.
The battle was over, but, in many ways, their real work was just beginning. They had proven that humans and Zekthera technology could work together effectively, but now they needed to decide what to do with that knowledge. Fleet conference in 12 hours aboard the Eternal Horizon, Marcus announced.
We've got some decisions to make about the future.
As the human ships began forming up around the ancient cruiser, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. More importantly, they had forged an alliance that could change the balance of power in their region of space. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity was done being contained. 6 months after the Battle of the Stellar Graveyard, as historians would later call it, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly established Zekthera Human Research Station, watching construction ships put the finishing touches on humanity's first truly advanced starbase. The facility orbited a strategic star system that Keeper had selected from his ancient databases, positioned to monitor multiple hyperspace routes and serve as a hub for their growing alliance. The station itself was a marvel of combined technology. Human engineering expertise had been merged with Zekthera manufacturing capabilities to create something entirely new, a facility that could serve as both a research center and a fortress, capable of defending itself against any reasonable threat while pushing the boundaries of what both species understood about the universe. The third wave of volunteers arrives tomorrow, Captain Rodriguez reported as she joined Marcus at the observation window. Sarah had been promoted to Admiral Rodriguez after the battle, tasked with coordinating what was now being called the Independent Defense Fleet. 200 more scientists, engineers, and military specialists. At this rate, we're going to need to expand the station again. Keeper's already working on plans for additional modules, Marcus replied.
He's as excited about the research possibilities as any human scientist.
Yesterday he showed me theoretical designs for ships that could travel between galaxies in a matter of months.
Sarah whistled softly. Between galaxies? That's beyond anything I can even imagine.
The Zekthera were working on it when their civilization fell, Marcus explained.
Keeper has all the theoretical groundwork completed. We just need to solve a few engineering problems. Minor details like containing enough energy to tear holes in spacetime.
Their conversation was interrupted by an incoming communication from the station's command center. Marcus, Admiral Rodriguez, please report to the main briefing room immediately. Priority Alpha communication from Earth Command. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. Priority Alpha meant direct communication from the highest levels of Earth's government, the kind of call that could change the course of history. They made their way quickly through the station's corridors, past laboratories where human and Zekthera scientists worked side by side on projects that would have been pure fantasy just a year ago. The main briefing room was already crowded when they arrived. Captain Torres was there, along with Captain Nakamura and several other fleet commanders. At the head of the table, Keeper's primary interface projected a holographic representation of his consciousness, a swirling pattern of light that somehow managed to convey intelligence and personality despite having no physical form. Greetings, Marcus, Admiral Rodriguez, Keeper said as they took their seats.
We have received a most interesting communication from your homeworld.
The main display activated, showing the stern face of Fleet Admiral Chen, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname. The Admiral was one of Earth Command's most respected officers, known for his strategic brilliance and his complete lack of patience for political games. To all personnel at the Zekthera Research Station, the Admiral began, his voice carrying across the room with crisp authority. I'm sure you're aware that word of your alliance and your recent military success has reached Earth.
What you may not know is that it's also reached our enemies. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine.
Earth Command considered their situation serious enough to warrant a priority Alpha communication from a fleet admiral.
That meant threats on a scale they hadn't anticipated. Admiral Chen continued.
3 weeks ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive fleet movements in collective space. Intelligence analysis suggests they're assembling a task force of over 300 ships, including several Dreadnought-class vessels that we've never seen before.
Their destination appears to be your region of space.
300 ships, Admiral Rodriguez whispered.
That's not a fleet. That's an invasion force.
Furthermore, Admiral Chen continued, we've received communications from the collective demanding that all human governments denounce your alliance and surrender the Zekthera vessel to their authority.
They're claiming that artificial intelligences of that capability represent an existential threat to galactic civilization. Keeper's holographic form pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as the AI equivalent of amusement. How flattering. I haven't been considered an existential threat to anything in several millennia. The collective has given us 30 days to comply with their demands, Admiral Chen went on. Needless to say, Earth's response was not what they hoped to hear. The Colonial Council voted unanimously to support your alliance and to provide whatever assistance we can. However, our ability to project force to your location is limited. Marcus leaned forward, studying the Admiral's expression. There was something else coming, something that would change everything.
Which brings me to the real reason for this communication, Admiral Chen said, his tone becoming even more serious.
The Council has authorized me to make you an offer.
Earth Command is prepared to provide full military support for your operation, including advanced ship designs and our most experienced crews. In return, we're asking for access to Zekthera technology and for your assistance in establishing similar research stations throughout human space.
The room fell silent as the implications sank in.
Earth Command wasn't just offering to help, they were proposing a formal alliance that would spread Zekthera technology throughout human civilization.
The ramifications would be enormous.
The decision is yours, Admiral Chen concluded. But, I should point out that with or without our help, you're about to face the largest military force the collective has ever assembled. They see your alliance as a direct threat to their expansion plans, and they're prepared to use overwhelming force to eliminate it. The communication ended, leaving the room in thoughtful silence. Marcus looked around the table at faces that had become familiar over the past months, humans who had risked everything to defend their independence and an ancient AI who had found new purpose after millennia of solitude.
Well, Admiral Rodriguez said finally. I think we all knew this day would come eventually. The question is, what do we do about it? We fight, Captain Torres said immediately. We've proven we can take them.
With Earth Command backing us up, we can handle anything they throw at us.
It's not that simple, Captain Nakamura pointed out.
300 ships is a massive force, even with our technological advantages.
And, if we lose, it won't just be our problem anymore.
The collective will have a clear path to Earth itself. All eyes turned to Keeper, whose holographic form had been pulsing steadily throughout the discussion. The ancient AI was processing information and possibilities at speeds that human minds couldn't match, considering scenarios and outcomes that would take human strategists weeks to analyze.
I have been reviewing the tactical data, Keeper announced finally.
The collective force represents a significant threat, but not an insurmountable one. However, any strategy for defeating them will require full cooperation between human and Zekthera forces.
What do you mean? Marcus asked.
I mean that it is time for me to share my most advanced technologies with your species. The manufacturing systems aboard this station are capable of producing vessels that would be superior to anything currently in service with any galactic military. With Earth Command's industrial capacity and my technological database, we could field a fleet that would make the collective reconsider their expansion plans entirely.
The implications were staggering.
Keeper was talking about more than just upgrades, he was proposing to revolutionize human military capabilities entirely.
What would we be looking at? Admiral Rodriguez asked. Ship designs, capabilities, timeline?
Vessels incorporating gravitic manipulation, quantum shielding, and weapon systems that could disable entire enemy fleets without destroying them. Production timeline with Earth's industrial base would be approximately 60 days for a squadron of 12 ships.
Marcus felt his excitement building. 60 days to build ships that could outfight anything in the galaxy. Keeper, are you sure about this? I am certain. The Zekthera faced similar threats during our expansion period. We learned that the only way to ensure lasting peace is to make the cost of aggression prohibitively high. The collective needs to understand that attacking human space will result in consequences they cannot afford.
Then, we accept Earth Command's offer, Marcus decided.
Admiral Rodriguez, transmit our response.
We'll provide full access to Zekthera technology in exchange for military support. Already composing the message, Sarah replied with a grin.
This is going to change everything.
Over the next few hours, they worked out the details of their response to Earth Command. The alliance would be formalized within days, and the first Earth Command technical teams would arrive within the week. Construction of the new ship designs would begin immediately at the research station and at 3 additional facilities that Earth would establish in secured systems. But, even as they planned for the future, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Humanity was about to become a major galactic power, armed with technology that could reshape the balance of space warfare. The responsibility was enormous.
Second thoughts? Keeper asked quietly as Marcus stood alone on the observation deck later that evening, watching Earth command ships arriving to begin the alliance process. Some, Marcus admitted.
6 months ago, I was just a salvage operator looking for his next meal.
Now I'm helping to make decisions that could affect the future of human civilization. Change is often uncomfortable, Keeper observed. But, it is also necessary for growth.
Your species has reached a critical point in its development. The choices you make now will determine whether humanity becomes a major force in galactic affairs or remains confined to its current region of space.
Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of the moment.
The collective's attempt to contain human expansion had backfired spectacularly. Instead of limiting humanity's growth, they had forced humans to ally with the most advanced artificial intelligence in known space. The resulting partnership would give humanity capabilities that most species took millennia to develop.
Do you think we're ready for this kind of power? Marcus asked.
I think you are ready to learn to use it responsibly, Keeper replied. And, I will be here to help guide that learning process. The Zekthera made many mistakes during our expansion.
Perhaps together, humans and Zekthera wisdom can build something better.
As Marcus watched the stars, he thought about the battle that was coming and the new age that would follow it. Humanity was about to announce to the galaxy that it would not be contained, would not be controlled, and would not back down from any challenge. The hegemonic collective had wanted to limit human expansion. Instead, they were about to discover what happened when you gave humanity a reason to exceed every limitation it had ever accepted. The ancient starcruiser that Marcus had discovered drifting in the void had become the foundation for an alliance that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. And, somewhere in the darkness between stars, the largest fleet ever assembled by the collective was heading toward a confrontation that would determine the future of dozens of civilizations. Marcus smiled as he watched the construction ships working on the station's newest expansion.
Let them come.
Humanity had spent millennia learning to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome impossible odds. With Zekthera technology and human determination working together, the collective was about to learn exactly why their predecessors had been so worried about containing human expansion. The galaxy was about to witness the birth of a new power, forged from the alliance between the youngest starfaring species and the oldest artificial intelligence. And Marcus Chen, former salvage operator, would be there to see every moment of humanity's transformation from a minor regional power to a force that could stand against any threat the galaxy could produce. It was, he reflected, one hell of an upgrade from his old job.